Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be reacting to a video called London versus New York City Comparison. Definitely two very different cities, although they're both like really big metropolis, but I'm excited to check this out, both great cities. So let's check it out and comment, like and subscribe.
London versus New York City. City comparison. Hello, won't it be great to do a city comparison here? Okay, let's start with London versus New York City comparison. In the course of this comparison, we shall see similarities and differences between living in London and living in New York City. Let me quickly tell you that this is not just a living comparison, but a city comparison. Therefore, while we would love to be as detailed as we can be, please don't feel let down when certain details about living conditions are missing. Nevertheless, here's a highlight of what we think you should know about these two iconic and fanciful cities that boast wonderful foods, classical theatre, exotic lifestyle and state-of-the-art technologies.
Beautiful cities.
Please enjoy the city comparison. London versus New York City. Size. London is the largest city of England and the United Kingdom. Sometimes referred to as the City of London and the Square Mile, the city has an area of 2 square miles. But this is smaller than the area known as the Greater London, which is about 607 square miles, which incorporates 32 boroughs. New York City, or NYC, often simply called New York, is the most populous city in the United States. The city, located in the southern part of New York State, the 24th largest city in the US, sits on a total area of 300.46 square miles. New York City is made up of 5 boroughs, namely the Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island, and Manhattan. Population. What about the population of the two cities? The population of London is estimated to be 8.9 million, while that of New York City is 8.8 million.
Oh, the same.
This means more people are living in London than those living in New York City.
It's almost the same.
Did you notice that we mentioned that the figures are just an estimate? The population of New York City is derived from US Census data analysis. While the London area is almost double that of NYC, the population figures for both cities are pretty close. London is only a couple of hundreds of thousand more populous than New York. For that reason, London's population density of 11,407 people per square mile is lower than New York City's. NYC, which is also the most densely populated major city in the US, has a population density of 27,000 people per square mile.
It's crowded.
Though London is bigger and more populous than New York City, more people are living on the streets of New York than you would find on London's streets.
Oh my God, it's true.
This is because more New Yorkers are packed and cramped into a smaller area than Londoners. People. This can be a bit controversial, but that's what has been observed about the people who live in both cities.
What?
Londoners, as those living in London are called, are polite, though other people see them as being too reserved or even haughty. They're perceived by foreigners as giggly and judgmental. It remains to be proved whether they see themselves in that light.
Judgmental?
People living in London are keen on structure and politeness in dressing. However, they can be less formal and can even unbutton their shirts at the pub. You can expect them to give you a long French stare if you're an oddball. One beautiful thing about the people living in London is the preservation of tradition. Tea has remained tea since millenniums, and lawyers still appear in white wigs. On the other hand, New Yorkers, as people living in New York are called, can be erratic, impulsive, but confident. Yet this produces the best result. As a matter of fact, if you don't have a measure of ruggedness or can't cope with furor, the non-stop city of New York is probably not for you. You can be called out for almost anything by New Yorkers. New York is for the determined people.
They're rude.
The city, however, is designed and run to allow everyone to get the best. Thus, nothing is depriving anyone of good food, dark humour and new experiences if you strive. Cleanliness. Both cities have a measure of struggles with dirt. It is understandable and expected of big cities. But in this city comparison, we have to give it to London. Why? This is not because New Yorkers have less cleaning and maintenance culture than Londoners. The fact is that waste management is challenging in most populous cities, and the higher the population density of a city, the more challenging it is to maintain a standard of cleanliness and orderliness, even in cities with large bodies of water around it. Food. As far as food is concerned, London is none of a big grab-and-go thing. Well, we mentioned tea earlier. You can't take that away from London. Coffee and pastry are surely for you to
I'm sorry, but tea and coffee are not food, they're drinks.
To take away in the morning. But when it comes to lunch and dinner, London wants you to sit in and eat. There are fantastic restaurants in London where you can have favourite meals which consist of Indian cuisines rich in curry. There is also pub fare with locally raised and farmed foods.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, many of the tourists do not know where to go to get the food they desire to eat, even while these foods are readily available
Makes
and
sense.
waiting for them somewhere in the city.
Yeah, but they
You
don't
can
know.
find even your native food there if you can find your way to where it is. A new food scene is the fish and chips pub fare outside of the touristy. It is entirely new and trendy.
Isn't that
Check
the
out also
traditional?
Michelin star restaurants in every neighbourhood. Now to NYC. In New York City, foodies will thank their stars.
Pretzels,
This is the
hot dogs?
headquarters of grab-and-go food. There is just something for everyone, from bagels to slices. For instance, the infamous New York
Oh, the pizza
slice
slice.
can't be strange to anyone who has ever moved to New York. There is a giant piece of pizza with the perfect cheese. It's just for a few bucks. If you travel to enjoy dinner in New York, you're in for a delightful sight. There are top restaurants where you can book your order in advance. The fact is that there's something for everyone in every street.
Yes.
A restaurant will be there that serves your need. Is it the one that exclusively makes bao, or one's thriving on Italian fusion? New York City
There's
is simply
everything.
unbeatable. Transportation. We have to tell you that it is difficult to determine which one is better between the two cities when it comes to public transportation.
Why?
Taking a taxi in London, for instance, will cost you a nice dinner, and taking a taxi
Oh.
in New York City can be worse than walking the whole journey.
Stick
London
the
still
subway.
prides itself in being a pioneer of the underground train service called the Tube. The London Underground remains unmatched to date. In New York City, the subway or metro can be a better way of getting around. It is faster than many other ways of getting around in NYC.
Yes, but
One downside to this and other forms of public transportation in London is that they close early on normal days.
how early?
Hardly do they work past midnight. But in New York City, public transport is 24/7.
That's awful.
Shopping. London is great for early risers, as there are many unique coffee shops and handmade breakfasts to enjoy when you want to explore those famous museums. Bear in mind that London is just a stone throw away from the famous shopping centres of the world such as Paris, Amsterdam and Madrid. You will get many of those top boutique brands when shopping in London. Just anything you are looking for, including
Yeah.
even dinosaur fossils, those shops will get them for you.
Oh my god.
New York City is a city that never sleeps. Everywhere, any time of the day. As mentioned earlier, there are unique restaurants,
Technically, a lot of places close like at 2 or 4 a.m.
coffee shops, and vintage stores in every neighbourhood that has its own cultural norms and styles, especially in Williamsburg. If you'd love to shop and have dinner, New York can be a more welcoming place to visit. London wins shopping
That's
in this city
interesting.
comparison. Yes, NYC has fantastic shopping, but those shops can't stand what London has to offer. Leisure.
True, maybe.
A good way to illustrate this is the availability of parks. There are more green spaces in London than in New York.
Yeah.
All space in this densely
Doesn't
populated
surprise
city
me.
has been occupied. In fact, the only park in Manhattan is
Park.
Central Park. But in London, you have open spaces and parks. Hyde Park and St James's Park are just examples of world-renowned parks. Now, what is your take? London versus New York City. Which one is better?
Both.
The choice is tough, right?
Yeah.
In summary, London is beautiful with the most famous landmarks in the world, while New York City is more exciting and fun-filled. Please, we would love to have your opinion of the two cities. Thank you for watching this video, and don't forget to subscribe, comment, and turn on the notification bell.
Yeah, I think it depends. Like, what would you prefer? I don't know. Both cities are gorgeous. I think they're both like incredible cities. So so it's like it's hard to choose. I think I don't really know. Like, it's a good comparison, but I think I don't think like one's not I think better than the other. I think it just prefers is about like preference and personal style and what maybe like you're looking for or what's interesting to you. But I think it's a little bit unfair to sort of like qualify them just sort of, unbiased and just say like, oh yeah, this one's better or this, I think this wins. No one wins. They all win. They're both of them are winners and there's no losers. That's what I think. But I think that's something that's interesting. It's how they're sort of perceived, at least in this video. I think like they were like, oh, New York is exciting and maybe like London is a little bit more like traditional because obviously it's more like it's older. So obviously it has like more historical like spots and places. and I think it's more a little bit of like, oh, we're like withholding like traditions, and we I don't know, we have like it's sort of like old timey in a way, and New York is seen as like, oh, this like exciting new place, it's the new world, which I'm like it's crazy because it's like I like you're telling me that, and I'm like, isn't that like very like I know 1800s view? Well, maybe even earlier of like, oh, the new world, like this is where the exciting stuff happens, and this is like the old world where it's very old fashioned and very we do things our own way because this is the United States and this is America and this is this is like the American way. So it is kind of like funny to see it reflected like that because it's like, oh, it is not like an old timey view. I don't know if I agree with this with like, yes, New York, like, oh, the city that never sleeps. It does sleep. Like there like some places like they close like at 4 a.m. sometimes even too, like the places are gonna close. Like it's not, oh, literally like I'm partying until like 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. or when I like hang out at a bar until like 5 a.m. No, it's not possible. Like a lot of places are they're literally like it's like last call, please get out, leave. So it is, I think, I don't know why, like it's the city that never sleeps, maybe in comparison to like other places. But definitely, yes, there's always going to be people around, but I think in London, I don't know how like how active people are after a certain time period, like in the middle of the night, but I would assume it's the same because a lot of like big cities, like again, they're sort of like, I know that London apparently has a little bit more people sort of like estimated, but I think they're probably equal or close to equal. So again, there's like places, these two cities like have almost the same amount of people. So it's gonna be hard. Like you have like around 9 million people, a little bit less than that. But I think it's gonna be hard to find a place in the day where there's like, oh, there's like no one here because it's like 9 million people live here. So of course it's hard to find an empty space, or like of course you're gonna be able to find like, oh, this street is like deserted, like there's no one in this alley at like, I don't know, 5 a.m. Yes, of course, it's an alley and it's 5 a.m. and maybe you're like in a sketchy part of town. So of course it's not gonna be brimming with people. But just in the general sense of the word, I think that it's like it's hard to find, like I think London should also be called like the city that never sleeps, because I think if I don't know, I've never been in London again in the middle of the night, but I would assume like if you're walking around, there's gonna be people on the street, because again, it's like so many people. Everyone leads like such different like lifestyles, and everyone's in their own little world. So it's like, I don't know your life. I don't know if you're like walking around at like 1 a.m. Like again, I don't really know. So it can be. So I think that it's a little bit like, I don't know. So it's a little bit unfair to call and I know NYC is known for being the city that never sleeps, but I think it's like a little, I don't know, maybe like, I don't know, 50 years ago, but I think like this day and age, I'm not sure if deserves that moniker, but I don't know, that's just me. As in like, again, the restaurants, I think like both have great like foods, I think. Like it's all, something that actually I think it's funny is that both places, they don't really have like something as called, and I think maybe like London, maybe it's a little bit more like that because of course they have like the tea, which is traditional, and they have, I think, like the fish and chips, which I think is like the national food of England, I think, Great Britain. But as a whole, like they're mentioning like a lot of like curries, and I think like the curry, I think like they were like famous for it, but I think there's like other sort of like other dishes and other cuisines that are like really famous over there, and they're good. Like they're famous because they're good. It's not that they're famous because they're bad. It's like, yes, you can have like great Indian food or great curry and great, I don't know, like I'm trying to figure like something, but I don't know, like other types of food, and they're gonna be good because London has been, and historically, like it's been like an immigrant spot, right? So of course it makes sense that they have like great food of all the different nations and all the different cultures that they have sort of like received, because it's like, well, yes, of course you have like the actual people that made it, so now we opened a restaurant, so yes, of course. But what I mean is that it's not actually sort of like British. I think in this day and age, probably like I think they have their variations, and it's sort of like you associate a little bit of like of those again, maybe curry is a bad example, but I really do think that I think at least that's my understanding, that at least I think London is really famous for their curries. And I know it wasn't invented over there, like it's an Indian type of food, Indian if I'm not mistaken, not like from Pakistan or something, but is an Indian type of Indian food. And because they got like a lot of Indian immigrants, then they sort of like perfected it to the point where I think like it's more of like, oh yeah, London, and you sort of like associate that with curry. And this is like one example. But what I'm going with this is that similarly in New York, I think it's the same. Like they got like so many like immigrants from all different kind of places. Like they have a lot of obviously the Italian community and the Chinese community. Although the Chinese community, like I think is everywhere. Although come to think about this, I think it's probably more popular in the United States than in London. Probably there are Chinese, obviously there are Chinese immigrants in London, but I don't know how popular like Chinese food actually is over there. I think like it's probably like maybe a little less popular than in New York and other places of the US. So that would be very interesting to me to find that out, because I'm like, again, if my theory is correct. But again, it's like New York like has had a lot of immigrants, and obviously you have like the bagels and stuff, which is, I know it's not technically you associate this with New York, but obviously bagels are not just specifically like a New York thing. Although, because they got like so many like Jewish immigrants that sort of like, well, it's sort of like similar. But however, like my point is that they both places are famous for their food, but they're not traditional as in like what you would think of like the traditional sense of the word. Like they all come from like other different places, and they were sort of like affected and influenced by the amount of immigrants that they got, which I think again is such a like interesting thing, how everything and how culture evolves to the point where you sort of like associate something with that particular city, although like its origins were actually like external, and it didn't even came from that country, which I love. And obviously that's like street food and not actual like fancy restaurants in which you can obviously like you can sit down and have like dinner. And I think there's like so many, I think they're go hand in hand. I think like if you go to like, oh, like it's a 5-star restaurant, and there's probably gonna be tons of them in London, but there's also tons of them in New York. I think it's like probably it's gonna be like similar. The shopping one, I'm a little like, I think I agree actually, because they were like, yes, London I think is probably more popular because they have like more stores and more, like shopping, like I'm to think of like maybe quantity and maybe like luxury shops, or maybe just like a lot of like things in general. I think New York, obviously, like yes, you get all the I think that you can find like all the shops that you can get in London, or at least like a lot of them you can also find in New York, and vice versa. But I understand what they mean is that a lot of these things are made like in Europe. So of course it's closer to, well, it's already in Europe, but I don't know if they're like fabricated in the United Kingdom in particular, but they're probably fabricated or made in other places of Europe. So it's gonna be probably a little bit easier to sort of like get stuff over there. And in New York, it's probably gonna be easier to find like, I don't know, like maybe from other places. I don't know. At least that's the sense that I'm getting, because they're like, yes, London, I think it's just better for shopping. I think it depends, like, what are you shopping for? I think that would be like my number one question is like, well, you're shopping for what? Clothes, perfumes, makeup, shoes, like leather goods. I don't know, like what exactly are you actually like shopping for? But I would, maybe again, it's just because of like Europe, and I think like the industry is a little bit bigger, then I would assume yes, probably London is better for shopping in general, like bearing a few exceptions. And as for again the transportation and cleanliness, I think it's always going to be like a hard thing to actually sort of like quantify, because like they say, it's like, especially like cleanliness, they're huge cities, so of course it's going to be harder. Like the more population you have and the bigger a city is, of course it's going to be harder to actually manage properly like the actual city. Obviously the amount of trash that people produce, like it's insane, and you can't actually like, I can't get on top of this. Like I'm trying, but I can't. So, it's actually surprising to me a little bit. I was like, oh, New York's quite dirty. Like there's like a lot of rats, and not dirty as in like, oh, it's a dump. No, not in that way. But I just think like, well, it's a little bit more common, I think, to like find a lot of like piles of like trash and just like rats in general. But there's gonna be rats in London as well, right? Like I think, does the tube have rats? The New York City subway has a lot of rats. I don't know, like it's the same, like the tube is the same in London, but I'm shocked by the fact that apparently, like, no, it's London is seen as a little bit less clean, especially like in comparison to New York, which again a little surprising, but maybe I don't know. I think they have more boroughs, if I understood it correctly, like the districts, boroughs. I don't know how. I can't remember the geographical sort of like identifier for London, for the London different types, the different parts of London. I don't think they're boroughs, right? No, they're not boroughs. It's something else. But I think it was like 25 or 25. I think I understood it correctly. Or I don't know. It was like a big number. So it was probably like, yes, it's more like sectorized. So it's gotta be harder to manage because again, it's like there's like so many of them that how am I gonna keep track of all of this? And the transportation again, like taxis and cabs, yes. They're expensive in New York as well. It's expensive, obviously. Like who takes a cab? Well, like if you have the money, yes. But like you can just walk around. I think London is probably a little. It's similar, but I think the best way is like again. I don't think like well you can take the bus in New York, yes. But I think it's a little bit like it's less popular. I think it's like probably taking the bus probably a little bit more popular in London. I want to say. I don't think in New York is that common because you either walk or you take the subway or maybe like you just walk because you're just like, oh, I can walk, like it's within walking distance. And I don't care. I don't mind. Unless you're like really in a hurry and you have money to spare and it's like, yes, sure, I'm going to take a cab. But again, however, yes, sometimes traffic is bad. And it's like, yes, I would have been better just like walking because like this is taking forever. So I think it just depends. But I think again, both cities, just because they're like so big, it's gonna be a little bit of a nightmare situation to like get around because transportation, even though like they're trying to do their best, I understand it's hard. It's like way too many people. Like around like 9 million people live there, and that's not counting like tourists and people that are just like passing through. That there's like two very popular cities, so of course there's going to be like at any given day there's like so many other types of people that are also like sharing the space, so it's going to be like, oh my god, there's like so many people in here. That is crazy. But I think that the at least that's what I think is that the reputation of like the subway, the tube, the London tube, I think has like probably a better reputation than the NYC subway, just because I think it's probably more like they're more punctual and probably the trains are a little bit better, and it's just like people behave differently. I think like sometimes I think in New York like it can feel a little bit like especially like in the subway, like, oh, it's a lawless land sometimes. But I think I haven't heard of like horror stories in around like London and the London subway. But maybe it's just me that I haven't heard of them, but they probably exist. But I think maybe like if you compare both of them, I think people are a little bit more, it's more civilized, I would say. Like maybe the whole subway and the tube is more civilized than the subway in New York, maybe. But again, maybe I'm totally off with this. But that was it for today, and I'll see you next time. Bye.